Good morning, Chaldea, and welcome to the trials of the authors of Fate versus the sensible people of the world. Honorable Judge Cole presiding.
Representing the defendants, J-Mick.
And the prosecutor, me, Jacob.
Good job.
Thank you. I forgot that we're not in an anonymous environment anymore.
Again, though, it's kind of, if the judge already is arguing against...
Sorry, this is take 2. Anyway, continue. The judge is arguing against, yes, what's the problem?
Well, if you're both arguing against the authors, then aren't you both the prosecution?
Yeah, but he's also the judge.
But I'm also, you can pay me if you want.
So, anyway, guys.
I feel like I already need to declare a mistrial here.
The point of this, is, as stated on previous episodes, is that we want to have an episode where we talk about the merits and the flaws and of all of the authors, artists, and generally speaking, characters from the modern age being represented as servants in the Fate series. Now, obviously, there are already a bunch of these, so like it's not like they're going to take them out of the game, and I'm not petitioning them to. However, I do kind of think they should move away from that concept. Not that they'll ever listen to this podcast and care, but
Maybe they will.
It is my opinion,
Don't,
and I'm not
don't talk yourself down.
and I'm not going to be, and I'm just not going to be excited about most any servant that falls into this category, with the exception of maybe a couple of the ones we mentioned last time, and those are exceptions that I'll have to go through in weird detail here. So anyway, we said we do this kind of like a trial, so I guess we'll go prosecute.
Opening statements?
Yeah, opening statements. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, giving everyone a view of our bias, J-Mick is very much in the camp of these are good ideas. They should continue to explore this concept.
I think they have a place.
Yeah. Jacob is very much in the camp of this is stupid. Writers should not be servants, and I'm more on Jacob's side. Although I'm a little more lenient occasionally with certain servants.
Yeah,
but yeah,
You think that there can be exceptions
Yes.
where it works.
exactly.
I mean there are exceptions already, and I can't really change that. But anyway, the point is, here's my opening statement as the prosecution.
Mr. Prosecutor,
So,
you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. So, my argument is that servants should be guys who fight things. Arrest my case.
I call this meeting adjourned.
All right. Well, as the
Defend.
representative for the defendant, I guess. I don't
it's
know.
not that complicated.
I don't know what the correct term is. I haven't seen a
Defendibor.
courtroom thing in a long time, but basically, I feel like a servant represents a legendary figure of some sort, a person of some renown who is has abilities representative of their mythos, as it were, and that authors, artists, composers, creative types in general have that just as much as actual warriors of a bygone age.
Right.
Sure, but an example I gave a while ago is it's just silly to imagine C.S. Lewis fighting Alexander the Great, because, like, not in the normal over-the-top anime silly where it's fun, in the this doesn't make sense kind of silly.
But I feel like that's kind of a lot of what Fate is. It's like, it's setting up these two people to fight, and you're like, what's going to happen? How are they going to fight? You can see, like, Alexander the Great is, of course, going to come at him with a sword, but C.S. Lewis, how is he going to fight back? Is he going to summon Lion
You're making
Jesus?
my argument me.
No, I'm saying you can get creative with it. You can have interesting ways to fight, interesting skills, interesting things that evoke that person's story. He can summon Aslan to fight for him as either a mount or as like his primary, like a stand almost. You can
he could do that.
You can have a noble phantasm where he literally just summons a wardrobe and sucks you into it. Like, there's a lot of different things that you can do.
Sure, you can do all that, but I feel you have to jump through a lot more logical hoops with like authors, artists, and so on and so forth than you do with like, and I don't know, Ku or Fergus, where these guys have literal fighting powers that they used in their legends.
And I'm going to break my role here and be more of the intermediary, and to say that I think that's kind of the point that J-Mick is trying to make here, is that these characters are somewhat interesting because you have to jump through these logical hoops in order to create more interesting ways of expressing their power sets. And that also that they are, legendary figures as much as anyone else is. And I can understand that viewpoint for sure. I definitely actually completely understand that, because a lot of Fate servants are based on their mythos rather than, or what people perceive them to be, rather than what they actually were. Because obviously, Hans Christian Andersen and Shakespeare didn't have magic powers that they fought enemies with. They weren't casters. It doesn't make any sense. But that being said, like, Robin Hood didn't even exist. So, like, at the same time, and what do? He shot a bow pretty good, and now he shoots a bow and then makes a giant tree appear. And
it's a hand crossbou for some reason.
It makes the poison from people's blood explode.
It's like, blood explode.
So, like, everything in Fate has been animized to some degree. So, like, it's not that much of a logical stretch for a character like Hans Christian Andersen or something like that to be able to do more fantastical things.
And I would actually say that the role of caster it's almost like it's made for people like this, because there are some instances of characters from the past who use magecraft, like Medea, but there's not all that many compared to people who swing swords and stuff. The almost there's almost the case of the real life magic users who are the people who create these things. It's almost this quote unquote magical effect of being able to transport a reader or a listener, or creating these works of art that just boggle the mind. It's almost to a lot of people who don't have those skills, who don't have that training and understanding, it is like magic.
And to quote a famous paradigm, science, when viewed with a insufficient knowledge, is indistinguishable from magic itself. So, like, you can argue stuff like Edison and
exactly, inventors
they're making some magic. Hell, I want Steven Spielberg in the game. He makes movie magic.
Does he
He's not dead yet, though.
Well, neither was.
We got it.
Redacted.
Oddly, the one and only case of that in the entire.
So, I know, right?
So what you're saying is we need to go kill Steven Spielberg so that we can get a ruler Spielberg.
I changed my mind. I want Nietzsche in the game.
Okay. He just makes all your servants really depressed.
What's the one movie guy who did 2001?
Oh, Kubrick.
Kubrick. Is he dead yet?
He's very dead.
He is dead.
Excellent. Put him in the game.
Actually, that would be kind of interesting because
no, stop yourself.
No, I'm just saying there is a bunch of people who very oddly enough believe that he helped fake the moon landing.
Yeah.
So you can have some astronomical stuff.
His
you can have some
phantasm
stuff
is like
based on The Shining.
landing.
You can have some stuff based on Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, like the giant Black Pillar, etc., etc.
However, I think if they're going to do someone related to movies, that's probably not who they'd pick.
Who do you think they would pick?
Considering
is
it's based
off-topic,
in
but-
Japan, it would probably be like Kurosawa or something.
Okay, that would be cool though, because Akira Kurosawa movies are really good.
I mean, yeah, but
I would like a Hitchcock character.
that would be awesome.
All right, so let's rein ourselves back in for a second.
Alright.
We're degressing back into last week's topic, but
And I feel like you guys are arguing my point for me.
well, I wanted to give it a fair shake before I tear it apart. My major point here is basically what I said before, but in a more format way. I want to give you a little taste. So my point is mostly that any character in Fate in a Fate game or, show or anything like that, what it really should be is cool and or interesting and or have a unique philosophy, because those are like the things that make up what Fate really is. And now I will say, for one thing, authors do often have a very strongly well-known well-formatted philosophy, because that's often part of what they do. Artists, people have psychoanalyzed famous artists for decades, centuries sometimes, trying to figure out what they were on, I guess. They're crazy
More
sometimes.
so than most warriors, I would say.
Absolutely. So, in that way, their philosophy is pretty strong. However, I think they're lame. And that's the part that really gets me, is that someone like... I'll start with my exceptions here, because I think they kind of prove the rule. Shakespeare is cool as a caster. And I'm not going to say he's, my favorite character or anything like that, but he's cool as a caster because he is Shakespeare, the most well-known author in all of history. He basically defined what it is to write a modern book or a play or whatever, right? And
he invented a ton of modern words also.
That too.
Yeah, I literally have a poster over here of all of the different words and phrases that he helped invent.
Yeah.
He also invented the phrase "in a pickle," which I don't know, that just always amused me.
What a great guy. And on top of all that, he's a interesting character because he's not only a famous writer, he's also kind of shrouded in mystery. Most people don't know much about him, and a lot of people kind of theorize that he might have even been a ghostwriter for someone else or whatever, right? So, it really comes down to the fact that this guy...
All of those theories are wrong, by the way. I did not suffer through 3 years of theater history to have some bumfuck on Reddit tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, I pretty much agree, but it is interesting because there are a lot of missing portions of his life that we don't know much about.
And precisely because he is this ancient character in terms of our history, because there's mystery surrounding him, and because he's such an important part of our history, I think he's actually a perfectly reasonable character to have in the game. Besides that, I basically can't justify anyone else. There are a few others that I'd like to kind of see, because they're interesting as well, and they have an interesting enough philosophy. Let me finish my point.
No, I know.
Okay. But they have an interesting enough philosophy that they could be cool, but most of all, they're just in terms of what abilities they would have and how they would interact with the plot of a Fate enterprise, which is ultimately at its heart, as we've stated, a battle royale. It just is not all of that interesting. Hans Christian Andersen is by far my favorite choice to pick on, because it's just such an awful choice in my opinion. He's freaking he's a storybook writer. He wrote Little Mermaid and stuff.
Yeah, Danish fairy tale author.
Yeah, wow, what an insanely terrible choice for a servant. I don't hate the servant's mechanical design, but first of all, what's going on with his visuals? Why is he a Shota? What's up with that?
I don't know. He's from the Extraverse, so I know nothing about him.
Well, I haven't played CCC, which is where he's from.
Yeah.
But I believe it has something to do with the fact that he wrote basically children's stories. He wrote fairy tales.
You're right. That makes sense.
As
actually,
an adult.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, he hates Kiara for some reason in the story, which it is interesting to me. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
story?
to be fair,
CCC.
she's pretty awful. So
Is Kiara in CCC? I've only just started watching a playthrough of CCC. In all fairness,
yeah, we're prepping for the CCC event, which is coming
right.
Because
I'm a pretty big fan of Extraverse in terms of the series. Although I think it's kind of goofy, but
Kiara is not a historical figure of any kind.
Okay.
She's an original character from CCC.
All right. Well. Anyway, my point ultimately here was that not only is he like a goofy character design, it's primarily that it's just like he wrote children's stories, and like all of his abilities are like, yeah, that you can kind of relate some of them to the books and everything, but like ultimately, what does he do? He just like he shoots like balls of energy at people. Like,
okay, you can't fault the animations.
I definitely can, but
I mean, no, I mean like half the characters that launch had those,
Yeah,
and they
they're
haven't
terrible.
animated. They haven't fixed most of the low star
That's
characters
correct.
yet.
But
So they would probably give him better.
But also, as someone who uses Hans a lot, like, they gave him, like, the worst noble phantasm based on who he is. Like, his noble phantasm has nothing to do with who he is as a person, from what I understand.
So as I understand it, that's actually like, I mean, CCC spoilers, I guess, if you're going to play it, but it's really hard for those of us in America to do so.
basically the only way is to watch an English playthrough, English like subbed playthrough on YouTube.
Basically the secret boss of CCC is Kiara, who turns into a servant because Hans uses his noble phantasm on her to use the story of her life to turn her into a servant, or like a pseudo servant.
All right. I don't know. But he's right. Anyway, the point is, they don't often have any kind of physical combat abilities, and they're not cool characters. Like Hans Christian Andersen is not cool, not interesting of a character. And like, there's other examples too. And it's not in most. This is where I kind of get into the not just author artist characters. I really think that Edison and basically literally any character within the last couple hundred years are too recent because they have a defined history. We know who they are. It's making fan fiction out of like Obama. You know what I mean? Like, it's someone writing. I get really weirded out because my sisters are really into K-pop, Korean pop, and they used to read a bunch of fan fiction for it. I don't think they do anymore, and they would always make these fan fictions of these self-insert characters being written into these, rom-coms with the members of a band.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
It's very weird. And it's not that bad, obviously, because they're not still alive. They're not, like that. But, like, they are established real people, and they feel much more real to me than someone from 2,000 years ago who is basically a myth as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit last episode, but I think really the biggest thing for us is that these people are too real. They exist too presently in our mind. We can I can't really imagine, or maybe that's because I can imagine all these different ways that King Arthur or fucking Caesar could fight and do, but the people who like Hans or like Mozart, they're too,
know their entire life story.
Yeah, they're too
I
real.
can literally look up pictures of this person. Like, I can see them. Like, this is what that person looked like. This is what they did. This is the life story. And now we're being taken into, actually they can put you into a reality marble and then make a story out of you, and then you turn into a servant or whatever.
So I feel like there's two different arguments here, because there's the argument about creative types, which is, it applies to everyone from Shakespeare to Andersen to Mozart to Hokusai to
okay,
that is one argument. But the argument against people who have lived in the last couple hundred years is different, because it's a whole different group of servants.
Technically different, but it's not a whole different group of servants. Because the Venn diagram is the two circles overlap a lot.
But I'm saying there's two different arguments, because there's people who fall into that category, like Blavatsky.
I don't know what that is. Is he in the game?
She's the
she, of course.
This one.
Oh, Helena.
She was
Why did you freaking say Helena?
She was a she in real life. Yeah.
Okay, was she actually?
Yeah.
She was
amazing.
a contemporary of Edison, I believe.
To be fair, she does have a female name. Usually they don't rename them, so that should have been a dead giveaway.
Voice has a whole video on her.
Huh.
So like,
Voice of Saint Quartz, that is.
there's
Come on our show.
there's a lot of I feel like that's a whole different argument to be had. And I can understand
There's similar enough arguments that I want to do it in one episode.
I can understand your concerns with having people who are more recent because there is less of a mystery about them. I don't think that necessarily dictates, like, I don't know that that's necessarily a net negative. Like, yes, there's...
It's a negative for me. That's the
know,
important part
but-
in my mind.
Like, that also leads me to, you're saying that, these characters aren't cool or interesting.
Yes.
A lot of that is, opinion-based, and
Correct.
that's really hard to argue against.
Right.
So, like, if you don't like them, that's totally fine. That's your prerogative.
Yes.
But...
And if you do like them, that is your prerogative.
I know, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to discuss objectively why they are good or bad for the game, for the Fate franchise.
Not really, in my opinion. Like, that's not really my main argument, honestly. My main argument is that they're not interesting or cool. So, like, it might be ultimately a subjective argument.
For me, my argument is these slots are being, like, based on our episode last week, these slots that are being taken up by less cool author and creative types could be filled by much more interesting characters. Like,
True.
I follow JP a little bit, at least knowing what's coming up, and the past few servants that they've released are like, I don't know these people. I have no...
Because they're all Japanese.
True. Well, the new one, the assassin, is Indian.
Right,
spoilers.
but, like...
I mean, it's been
before that, the last
subreddit, you've
several
probably
had
seen
been
it.
just Japanese, and that's just, I guess, our fault for not being Japanese that we don't know these people.
Mm-hmm.
But I do kind of feel like that's a whole nother rant, but I do feel like there's a lot of these Japanese servants that they have in there that, had they been, like, American or English or, from a different thing, it would be like, well, nobody knows who that person is. But because it's Japanese and because their primary target audience is Japan, they're like, oh, well, it's all these famous people from history, and everyone outside of Japan is just like...
Yeah, it would be like putting Hamilton in the game.
I mean, I would agree, but it's, there is a little bit of that international reputation
You're not wrong.
from the musical specifically, but
When normally that's what it would...
normally I would agree. I would say that, like, you really shouldn't put most presidents in the game unless it's like Washington.
Andrew
maybe
Garfield,
Lincoln.
put him in the game.
I mean, I
He
feel
gets
like
a nice plate of lasagna.
I feel like... I mean, isn't that basically what someone like Cha-Cha is in the game? That's like the Japanese Andrew Garfield.
You're not wrong. It's like a minor political figure from, like, the Sengoku period, right?
I mean,
is it the Sengoku period?
I have no
wrong?
idea. I have no idea about
I
Japanese.
think they
the
called
Edo.
it Warring States.
Well, I think that's Sengoku. That's, I'm saying this
Sengoku.
right. I think Sengoku is the Warring States period.
They had a whole bunch of different names and words
They really
in there
did.
that were like...
I think most of them were made up, but I'm not sure.
Apparently-
I'm just here for Okita and Nobu, thanks.
Apparently, Japan is like changing age, like eras or something right now.
No, really?
Yeah, like they're going from...
Oh, wait, they're like, right now, they're going through a shift.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know why,
Okay.
but I heard that
That is
somewhere.
interesting.
I always thought that was more a thing that you look back in retrospect
Right.
and you're like, okay, this is where there was a dramatic change, and that's...
Well, I guess
I don't think it's like, okay, we're changing now, congratulations
To be
everyone,
fair,
we're in a new period.
in Japanese history, a lot of them were directly tied to, like, the ruling house of, whatever era it was in. So,
I
like,
guess.
it kind of makes more sense in that aspect, but, I mean, that's not really how it works now, because they have, like, a prime minister, so...
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means, but,
I doubt they change ages every...
they're going
Prime
into
Minister.
the anime age, is what's
Yes.
happening. So.
They're ruled by Kizuna Ai now.
Alright, so anyway,
Well,
Going back on topic.
let's go back on topic for a bit.
I mean, are there any other major... you were saying, like, the more creative type servants are taking slots of other ones.
like
I mean, I guess that's fair, but
I feel unless a servant is really warranted as as a creative type, unless they like really made an impact on history of the level of Da Vinci or Shakespeare, Mozart even, I'm willing to go a little bit with.
Sure.
But that there are so many, as we discussed last episode, there are so many more interesting characters, I feel, that could take up
writers.
Yeah, that could take up those slots.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, I'm just tired personally of the creative characters being put in like all in the caster slot. Like
yeah,
there is
definitely spread it out more.
Like,
yeah, like I said with Poe and Dante in my last episode, I think it could be more interesting if they spread out the classes.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I literally spent all of my course recently trying to roll for Nero Bride. Well, A, because I like Nero, and B, because I just want some freaking support classes in non-saber roles, you know?
Arguably, you could, you could turn that around and say, Nero Bride is just, fan version.
Yeah, I think it's actually
of
a pretty terrible
character that's
inclusion.
taking up another slot and is all this stuff.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I think Nero Bride's a pretty awful inclusion in terms of like value to the game. Like, what is this character even from? Is it from something? I don't know.
I think it's from
CCC.
Jesus, this CCC is messed up. Don't ever watch it. Don't play it. Just delete it. It's just weird.
Literally, the explanation for why she has a bride outfit is because she looked at Tamamo's Fox's wedding skill and she's like, well, I want to have a wedding too.
I'm just so
Imperial Privilege EX.
Oh my god. It's just so stupid. But like all the summer characters too. It's kind of the same thing. I know they're just using summer characters as like an excuse to have characters you like in bathing suits, which is obviously a terrible use of a servant slot. But at the same time, it's something people want. So, like,
Give
I guess
us more creative summer servants. Where is
my God.
Summer King Hassan? Freaking lifeguard King Hassan.
Actually, that'd be excellent.
You guys have seen that fan art, right?
Yeah.
Where
think
he's
so,
like,
yeah.
Or like as a saber where he just has a shark.
yes.
A swordfish.
Oh yes. Perfect.
So, okay. Here's my last like big take on this. You're right. There are two different arguments here. There are creative types and there are servants that are under like the last couple hundred years old. Creative types I don't inherently have a problem with. I think they're not the most interesting characters you could ever do, because I think a lot of them, as I've said, are not inherently suited to having interesting skill sets and like things they can do. Some of them are, like Edgar Allan Poe, I think would be a pretty good example, and he's even fairly like recent comparatively speaking, I guess. When did he
1800s?
Yeah, like 1800s. Like so, like not like I mean, like that's a while ago, obviously, but you know, it's within my limit. The point is, there's a couple of characters that have interesting skill sets to make the creative portion of it, like you know, whatever, it's fine. But so many of those also fall within the time gap thing, and that, combined with the fact that they're also this recent character, this recent person, real life human being who lived and died, and we can look up shit about them, and is getting turned into an anime girl to fight battles. It's just weird. It's like Cole's original problem with King Arthur, and that it's weird to turn King Arthur into an anime girl and have her.
Well, that's a whole other episode.
Well, I mean, it's not really. It's the same idea. Is my point. You know, it's like it's weird that there's like a lot of weird and baggage to unpack with that. But like the point is, it's weird that she got turned in. Got turned into an anime character because of anime girl. Just for the sake of anime. And it's the same thing for, like, you know, Edison or whatever. He's a giant electric man with a lion head. Like,
they literally turned him into American Neon Cat.
His like 20th century lion, Edison or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah,
like,
he summons the 20th century Fox
it's
logo.
It's garish. And I know it's partially because they're like, haha, America is goofy. But, like...
Oh, yeah, they're totally making fun. I
Yeah,
literally
they
did not
definitely
realize
are.
that until just now. They're making fun of us.
100% they they are making fun of us.
You did play EPU, right? That's basically what that was about.
EPU is just like, ha ha ha, America's silly. Also, India's silly. Actually, they were pretty honestly nice, like cool about the Indian stuff in there. Like the Indian heroes and stuff. Rama was a really cool. They did a really good job telling Rama's story.
Was cool. Like, I've talked about it before.
That was honestly, I had used Cole's Rama.
And the Karna Arjuna interaction was cool.
I liked it all. Yeah, that was the best part of it. In fact, I think. Although, you know, the coups and the Meb.
I thought that Meve was a pretty. I thought Meve was a pretty good villain.
Yeah, she was interesting. Yeah.
But
so,
we're getting off track.
Super off topic. The point of the matter is, in my opinion, just that I think that they overlap in that way, and that the recent characters just don't work for me in that way, and I don't ever think they will work for me in that way. The fact that there are writers on top of that double down on it. The recent characters that aren't like creative types and were more warriors and stuff, like, it's hard to even come up with examples, but if you could, like, I don't know, come up with a famous sniper from World War II or something.
See, that's the thing.
I'd be kind of okay with that, though.
I have a question. Does it make a difference if the creative type in question also was involved in some sort of fighting? For example,
maybe.
Let's say Tolkien. Tolkien fought
in
World War I, I think?
I believe so, yes. The thing is, Tolkien isn't known for fighting in World War I. He's known for writing Lord of the Rings.
Right, but would it make a difference if when they make the Fate version of Tolkien, he has that experience of being a soldier, but he fights with, like, the One Ring and elf armies and stuff, and he's coordinating...
I mean... That's
like
definitely. I feel like that's probably copyrighted, but
I'm just saying in theory.
He's fighting with generic Walmart brand elves.
Yeah,
I don't know. It would help. I still wouldn't be my first choice by a long shot, but I'd be like,
Tolkien specifically still falls into that too real.
He definitely does. Like, he's too real. But on the other hand, like, at least he does kind of have, like, that whole warlike aspect to his, like, creations and his own character. So, like, there's at least some element of that. Like, it's not one particular issue, I guess, is the real thing. I guess there's a whole Venn diagram. It's people who use creative issues. There's people who had real combat experience. There's people who lived in the last couple of 100 years and thus are very real in my mind. And people who fit into, you know, certain categories of that are going to make more sense to me as servants. And I'm ultimately not going to be very happy if they put, you know, another author from the 1900s in the game, because I'm like, well, that character is just very silly to me that they would be a fighter in a holy grail war, you know what I mean? Like, I know you don't feel that way, and that's fine, honestly. But
I'm also a big story nut, so I like when they have characters who do. I mean, I'm a writer, so I like to defend writers as well, because I think that their deeds, their creations are as noteworthy as those of, you know, people who went out and swung a sword around. But
for real life, if you ask me who is more important, like Alexander. Well, okay, that's a bad example, I guess.
Well, what effect does Alexander who has more effect on your life at the moment, Alexander the Great or Shakespeare?
Well, not either, really, because I don't read any Shakespeare. But Shakespeare has a lot of effect just on the language we use. So even in that respect, I'd have to say Shakespeare. And so I do agree with your point. Like, it's not. I'm not saying, like, in terms of real life that's more important, but in terms of which character I want to spend quartz on in a, you know, anime dating simulator game, you know, and also this is one thing I think we want to talk about more in the next episode, which, little preview spoiler, is going to be something more along the lines of the visual design and how, like, they do different servants and stuff like that.
And, like, creative treatments.
Creative treatments of servants, yeah. I think it's a nice way to flow these topics together. But yeah, it kind of relates to that. You know, it seems like a lot of the writer creative type servants, and really just recent servants in general, tend not to be gender bent as much. And I think that's in deference to the fact that we do know more about them, and, like, it's not like, you know, well, Abraham Lincoln, well, now he's an anime girl. Like, no one would be down for that.
No.
Like, it'd be really weird if Abraham Lincoln was an anime girl. I mean, it's really weird that Edison has a lion head, but
Yeah.
but I mean, it's maybe a little less weird than if he was if he had a lion head and boobs. That'd be very strange.
I do have one more question. Would it make a difference if one of these new creative types, instead of appearing in the game, just appeared in, like, say, a new anime about a Holy Grail war?
So how do you mean?
Well, like CCC, you know, like CCC is weird because it has a bunch of these weird characters in it.
I'm saying, like, if they come out with a new original show that's in the same vein as, like, a Fate Zero type.
Yeah. Or Apocrypha might be a better example.
Sure, like Apocrypha. Would you, like, be upset if there was a character like that in there because they took up someone else's slot? Or would it be more a case of, like, this is the character that's in there, and because often the identity is even hidden for a long time.
Depends on the show.
If the character was used specifically because that character had a very appropriate philosophy for the type of story they wanted to tell. If they're just using it because, hey, we need to fill a caster slot, then no, which is kind of what I felt they were doing with Shakespeare in Apocrypha. Like, it could have really been any caster. It was cool that it was Shakespeare,
because then he got to do the whole thing at the end where, like, he was actually the only one who, like, no one could take on John martially. Okay,
that's like the end of the show.
Okay, fine, but the moment he's able to do something that only he can do.
That's true.
Near the end of Apocrypha.
That being said, it's the only thing he does in the whole show.
Right, but that's
aside from about amazing one.
He did have some great one-liners.
But, like, if that's his main purpose in the show, I think his presence is warranted.
So I definitely don't agree with you. I think Shakespeare was fairly poor in that show. Like, he was entertaining, but I don't think there was really any real value to him being a servant in this situation, personally. And I think my main thing for that is the fact that if they do what Cole said is basically what I agree with. As I was taking a dump earlier today, and I was thinking to myself, I was thinking to myself, you know, those great, like, you know, toilet thoughts, you know, and I was thinking to myself, the most important part of a character in any Fate show is moving the story in the direction they want them to move it, because it's the anime, the TV shows, the visual novels are ultimately all about the story. You could make some arguments for some of the more gamier things in the series that they're not entirely about that,
right? But
ultimately the best part of a Fate is always the story, really, and especially in the anime stuff. So they really have to fill a specific plot. This is not as true in Fate Go, even though the story is very important. They also have to do a lot of other things. So regarding from the anime standpoint, I would say I pretty much agree with Cole. If there is a specific need for a character with that philosophy to tell the story they want to tell, okay, maybe. I can acquiesce that. But, like, but in general, I'd be like, I mean, I'd rather they didn't. I'd rather they had more or less any other character that had a similar philosophy, I guess.
Alright. I think that's about all the questions I had. Do you guys have anything else before we move to our closing segment?
I just want to say one thing. Objection! That's all.
Oh, this is a trial parody, isn't it? I completely forgot. All right.
No, that's wrong.
Oh, that was a Danganronpa, Jake.
Close enough.
Dang it, Grandpa.
Alright, so let's see. We're
on to our closing segment. Yeah. The best servant that you're not using. J-Mick, I believe it's your turn this week.
Am I up? Okay.
Yes, right, you are.
So let me tell you about my lovely friend, the Stabby Witch.
The Stabby Witch.
The Stabby Witch. We are talking about Medea today. And I think that for a non-gold servant, she has a lot of a surprising amount of utility and also decent damage output. That I think she should see more play. So let me go over real quick. So her she has a standard caster deck, 3 arts, a quick and buster, with a single target arts noble phantasm.
This is notable because as I was playing through the game rapid fire to try to like catch up to Babylon, Bootylon, I had a real problem finding any freaking single target caster NPs. I think Sanzong has one, but
Sanzong is
that's
the
kind
big
of
one.
And
Sanzong's
no one I knew had one. So.
Also, Sanzong's is a buster, and notably she can't chain it at all.
Yeah,
So, because she only has another
that being
single
said,
buster
memes, haha, so it's fine.
From what I understand, that's kind of like why Medea is so good, is because she can literally fire her if you like set her up with even like a minimal amount of effort, she can literally fire off her NP every single turn.
Just about. I have in fact had turns where I will be using her with like let's say Tamamo, and I will buff Medea's arts performance.
Oh, is that a thing Tamamo can do?
Yes, she has targetable arts performance.
I've never used Tamamo.
It's because everyone has Merlin on their support list now.
Yeah, I mean, I have Merlin, so why would I ever use
basically the arts version of Merlin's Buster support.
Oh, does it have bonus to crit damage and HP as well?
No, shut up. So, back to Medea. So if I like buff her art support for 3 turns, I can sometimes I will reliably be able to use her Noble Phantasm Rule Breaker on 2 of those 3 turns. Always, basically. Sometimes all 3.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. And
so,
like the No Phantasm at NP5 does do fairly decent damage. I'm not gonna say it's like fantastic, but I don't know, what CE do you tend to use on Medea?
CE, so
I'm like guessing something to boost arts performance.
Arts performance is very good.
4 cards, including her Noble Phantasm, that are arts.
Yeah, so Formal Craft is very good on her. Just get a general arts performance up. Also, if you use, what is it, Black Grail, the one that's like NP up 60%.
60? Oh, is that
and then
is
damages
that max,
you every turn?
Is that MLB'd?
Don't think so.
No, it's like
really?
That's just the base version.
I
And
thought it
you
was
take
50.
like
Black
50
Grail is
damage
really
every turn
fucking
or
good.
something.
Yeah, it does have a slight demerit of damage, but like
Yeah,
I mean,
but
whatever.
it's because with Medea you're going to be using her Noble Phantasm
and
so
she does
often.
have a self heal.
And she has onto her her active skills.
Do you have while we're still on C's, do you have Magical Girl Sapphire from the
no, I don't. I didn't roll on that one.
It's good on her.
What does that do?
It's I use it a lot on her. It's increase NP gain by 25% and start with NP charge at 40%.
That's not bad.
It is pretty good. Although the starting MP charge matters less for Medea because
does.
of the freaking stupid charge skill. But go ahead and say the skills.
Yeah. Her passive skills aren't much. Like, she has Territory Creation A, which increases her arts performance by 10%. It's not nothing. Item Construction A just increases debuff success rate. She doesn't really give debuffs, so...
I mean, these are just the standard, bog
Yeah,
standard
it's
caster
the standard
skills.
caster skills. So, her first active skill is High Speed Divine Words A, which charges her own NP gauge. At level 1, it charges it 80%.
That's more than like most characters do at max rank.
It makes me kind of mad how broken the rapid casting skills are.
Well, she's like... She has I believe, the highest version of this, except for maybe Cersei has it at the same level.
Yeah.
But, yes.
I was gonna say, I have, what's the Egyptian pharaoh lady?
Nitocris.
Thank you.
I
hers is
have her
good,
too.
but it's not as good.
It's not this strong, though. And it has a 9-turn cooldown at rank 1. But
that's
by
a lot.
rank 10, it's a 7-turn cooldown, so
Probably
you can
twice
use it
per battle. Depends on the team.
Yeah. and it charges her NP 150%. So whenever you need to use her Noble Phantasm, you will be able to use it. Like, it doesn't even matter. Her second active skill is Argon Coin. So it's you
heals her.
It heals her. At rank 1 it's like not much. It's
like
just 500.
Yeah.
But at rank 10 it's 2500 health every 4 turns.
Wait, what?
It's a 4-turn cooldown at
that's
rank 10.
Pretty good.
That's
so
good. I still don't value heals highly because I'm a big puss baby.
You can, however, give her
objectively
a
wrong.
healing up. Like I use the sometimes I use the Maiden Halloween CE on her, which increases her healing by 75%. Which is
that healing she does or healing received?
either one. In her
I guess
case,
in her
it's
case,
the same
it
thing.
doesn't matter, yeah.
And her third skill is something relatively unique. Not a lot of people have this.
This is the main reason why I'm considering using her at the
So
moment.
after her strengthen quest, she gets Teachings of Circe A. Or actually, I think the American version might be
American
Teachings
version.
of Hecate.
American version is Circe's teachings.
Oh, okay.
Please tell me that Circe has a similar ability to this.
I don't think
That makes
so.
me really mad. All right, continue.
But it is a targetable debuff cleanse that also increases NP gen for 1 turn.
Yeah. It's
At
a
max
lot.
rank, this is a 50% increase to NP gen. That's not usually what you're using it for. You're usually using it just to get rid of debuffs.
That's really why, like, I think Medea is used a good amount, like, even in I guess NA's current meta, because she can fuck around with like debuffs and buffs a good amount.
It makes me really happy because like certain characters like Summer Servants often stun themselves to have like these Nova turns, and that's awesome. But like and like Jean too. Well, before the whatever.
She'll eventually
get rid of that. But the point is.
Yet.
Yeah, like it doesn't have it yet, and right now she can get rid of the stun, completely negating that debuff.
Yep.
Now the thing is, this is so much better than the average like what's it called? Disengage.
Yeah,
I hate disengage. I know it's like not a terrible skill, but
it's
like,
not great.
but like every time I'm like, everyone is like, oh yeah, it's pretty good, and then I get it. I'm like, I can't cleanse any of the stuns or other debilitating debuffs. The only thing you can cleanse is like attack, crit, defense downs, and I'm like, that's not terrible, but like it's too niche.
Like poisons or something, but it's like
like
and it doesn't even heal you for almost
tiny.
anything.
enemy stands don't use like non-stunning.
Right, they mostly just stun you.
But honestly, the most important thing I found with Medea is just the fact that she has that strong offensive Noble Phantasm that removes buffs. I haven't discussed this yet, but that is so important.
It is. That you can launch that turn 1. There's a bunch of bosses that need like their debuffs removed 100%.
So you can just, if you're using the plug suit, you can just swap her in, immediately charge her NP and get rid of their debuffs on the turn that you need to do it.
But yeah.
I'm sorry, get rid of their buffs the
Does
turn
it
that...
hit
you can also get
before-
rid of your team's debuffs if you need to.
The damage hits before debuffs.
Yes, unfortunately...
Very unfortunate
it
for things like evade.
It
and
gets
stuff,
rid of
but-
buffs after, but you can still get them out of the way. Like, you can NP chain it, put her before someone else that you want to hit. There's a lot of different ways to use it. So,
What's your favorite Medea team? You said like you like Medea, Tommo. Who would be
definitely
your third?
Jean? So let's see.
Jean
Probably
makes a lot of
Jean.
sense. That's a really nasty stall team.
It's a very good stall team. Arguably, Mash is better
do love some
than
Mash.
Medea in that, but if you're
But that's
facing an
going
assassin,
like you do no damage ever team.
yeah, if you're
that's
facing like an
frustrating.
assassin or a berserker, you would want someone like Medea to just actually deal damage.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be, I mean, like real talk. As much as like the best stall team is probably with Mash, but that you're really doing no damage and just sitting it out, waiting for their HP to slowly
Neither is the
drain.
enemy team too.
God,
But
it's fucking boring.
I also sometimes like to use like Tomomo and Medea just go so well together.
do.
I also sometimes like to use them with Shiki. Again, arts based, has good
like your art
NP
servants.
gain, and
He just rolled a lot of good art.
I rolled a lot of good art servants, but she has really good NP gain, another good single target noble phantasm, and I also want to briefly mention, because I didn't do this yet, Media's Bond CE,
Oh yeah.
because I do have this.
Is yours actually good?
It's pretty good. It's Hecate's staff. It increases your party's arts performance by 15%.
Oh, for you,
So,
that's pretty dope. Yeah.
like it's pretty generic, but it's still, you're probably gonna be using her on arts teams. So,
a party-wide
it's just-
15% is great.
It's very nice.
Yes, and I guess that does, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I have red brain, but I guess that does increase their NP gain, not just damage.
Well,
Yeah.
think about it. If he was on one servant, it would be effectively a single target arts mana burst.
That's just persistent.
Exactly. That's just always. Across your whole team, you could argue it's more or less good. Probably less good because you could focus on choosing the 45% characters. But, like, still, it's really good. Because then other characters will be able to have, other buffs on themselves as well. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like a great one, especially if you're building arts teams, which obviously she's going to be on an arts team. Almost certainly. So,
Yeah.
Unless you have some, like, really weird shifting debuff team.
I mean, like,
Which there aren't a ton of.
Like I said, I'm probably gonna play her or maybe someone else with like Ryder Ishtar in the future. There's not that many characters who can cleanse the debuff, so like I'm kind of limited in that.
Like I said, the only one I know of that I use regularly is Martha.
Oh yeah, and I mean I could use Martha. I mean, does Ruler Martha have as well? Or is that gives immunity to debuffs? I think.
I don't know.
Whatever.
No.
We'll look it up and then edit it in. I won't edit it in.
We don't know.
We don't edit this podcast.
Not more than I have to. That's for damn sure.
All right. I think that's about it. Anything else on Media, or I guess Cole, take us out.
Yep.
No, she's cute.
She's pretty.
She's a cute
freaking adorable.
adult wife.
Yes.
And I
Yeah,
love
that is a good point. Anyway,
Mature waifus only.
I'm kind of at this point.
thank you for attending the trial of the authors of Fate. We will be reconvening shortly to discuss the character designs of Fate next episode. And until then, see ya!
The defense rests.
The prosecution will never rest.